Hey guys, we are back with episode 2 of Focused Action, and we're super happy and blessed to be able to do this every week for you. I think a lot of people might be wondering, and I get this question a lot, so we thought we'd focus today's topic around how do we discern good information from fake information. There's just a lot of information out there because frankly this is an information war. And so how do we then, sift through all of that and come up with where we're going to focus, right? Because, this podcast is called Focused Action. What we've been doing the past year and a half are very focused actions. So how do we know what to do? And I will just say that there's no easy answers to all of this, but I think what surprised me, at least the most, in the past couple of years as I've been paying more attention to things, right? I think I was always, pretty tuned in to the fact that, my work was being censored. I don't even know anymore, a natural health blogger, and we were pretty attacked very early on. I was censored on Facebook as far back as 2012, believe it or not, for speaking out about GMOs and other things, other fun things that I think was not allowed, right? So people, have maybe just been noticing this the past couple of years, but this is something I've been dealing with for a while. And I had a whole network of friends who were also natural health bloggers, and we were all being attacked at the same time. And so it was pretty clear, with how our viewers and blog readers were, went from here to here, right, in the blink of an eye, because of just how we were suppressed in Google search rankings and just things like that. So I think as I've become even more aware the past couple of years, what surprised me, and, Bobby, I'd love to hear your take on it, but just how hard it is for people to look within themselves, to think, right? To really start to think and go to the source of information. We're like waiting for somebody to tell us something, right? We're always waiting for some person who is maybe smarter than we think we are to share some information in a way that we can consume it, right? And I've even found this when I'm trying to explain something to someone about natural health, for example. It's like, they don't want to read, like I'm looking right now at my bookshelf and I've got all these books, right? All these amazing books from, decades past, right? And it's a whole library of things. But when I think I want to learn something, I go and I read old books, right? Like I pick up books. I don't necessarily look online all the time for things. I love to read and I like paper books, right? And so even just, let me give an example. Like I remember years ago, I was just thrown by the fact when I learned that maybe butter was like good for you, right? Like we had been taught for so many years that butter was like literally Satan incarnate, right? Butter was so bad. It could kill you. It could clog your arteries. It would give you a heart attack and stuff. And I just remember thinking, like, what if butter, I read somewhere that maybe it was good. And I was like, what if it is good? And it was like, I read one place that it was good, but it's like, I wanted more sources. And I remember buying lots of different books and coming, to my own conclusions about it based on reading a lot of different things, and reading old studies. Where did it come from? What was the history of this? And, what happened with sugar and why was sugar, suddenly put in the forefront, because if you were going to take butter out, what did they add in to make things taste good? Well, they added a lot of sugar, right? And so you have to substitute, something else for something. So I just was of the mind that if, okay, like, and it opened my mind to think, okay, well, if it wasn't made, by God in that way, like, and it started making me think about a lot of things. Like they told us eggs were bad. And so it's like, okay, like people were eating egg whites. Well, why would God make the egg a certain way and then we gotta like take something out of it? Or like skim milk, another example. It's like, well, why do you gotta take the cream out of it? Like these things where it's like we're trying to change, something that is very naturally made a certain way, right? And it's like, why is that, right? So this was kind of where I was starting to think about, well, who were these people that were saying that this, was good for nutrition and this was bad? And as I was trying to get through and figure out all of this nutrition stuff, it was very clear to me how many studies out there were totally flawed and cherry picked and all kinds of weird, things that I am not.
Coca-Cola.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like so that's kind of where I started to realize that I needed to be looking at old books, at the source, understanding information in a different way. And so the studies and the science and the news, all seem to be coming together to push this narrative like butter is bad and eggs are bad and cholesterol is bad and so anyway, that's kind of how I came to the realization that like maybe I need to look at these things on my own because I'm being pushed some information that is not right, not helpful. And so I don't know about you, Bobby, but that's kind of where I came to the realization that like, wait, these people are just listening to what's being put out there and not going and reading or learning anything new.
Yes, I had almost the exact same experience. I think 2012-ish, I was like really big into like the paleo movement, and like a paleo diet, and reading books about the paleo diet, and then all like the paleo. Not to go into the whole thing, but the thing that fascinated me the most was about archaeology discovering teeth and the differences in the amount of cavities in skeletons that they've discovered after farming. So after they introduced grain into their systems, and how many more cavities they had, and what that did to the lives of these indigenous people that they were digging up all over the world. And I was like, oh, I mean that's a real thing, and it's science based, and there's studies, and then but if you promote something that differs from the traditional food diet, Google was penalizing people. And in my day job, I get paid to be able to advise what Google does, and that the penalization for providing information that I believe to be true but differed from an approved narrative was like, what is this? Like, and then like I couldn't settle for just like that. It's because we're giving bad information. Like all of the explanations for why Google did that in 2011 to 2012 never really set well with me. So it was like there's got to be a bigger reason. Like they don't just this didn't just happen. And so then I dug into like who different people are that are related to Google, and then you find out like how much how they are very intertwined with big pharma. So they're not necessarily they're just voting with their friends. That's how and that's how a lot of things end up being. So like you said earlier about like studies about how butter's bad for you. Butter may or may not be good for you, right? Like as people, we need to figure it out for ourselves. But one way you fall into a trap is that is the thing I've noticed around like almost everything. It could be political news, it could be like local politics, it could be health, food, anything. Is that there's this like economy of intermediaries that stop you kind of in the middle between getting to the real truth of whether butter is good for you or not. And there are little clubs that are like, no, you should get vegan butter, and here's all the reasons why vegan butter is good. But they didn't say why real butter is bad. They just started promoting their thing and speaking over you, and they give you headlines or little things, and it's like we've all been bred to shortcut the answer, right? So as my experience with Google is that people will search for the best butter or the best something because they want to avoid the amount of time necessary to find, like they don't want to read a book. They don't even want to read 10 search results. They want to find the best one, or they want to find a blog post that talks about the 4 best ones, and that's it. They want to minimize. And I think that's because we're overwhelmed with so much information that we were like, okay, I need to find out a thing, but I don't want to read 1,000 things. I just want to spend 15 minutes so I can go back to my life. And so because we've been bred that way, we tend to take headlines or click bait headlines and take them as facts when the whole article might contradict the headline. My neighbor's kid, my neighbor's kid called out his dad, based by making a snap judgment based on the headline, and it made me made me laugh out loud because he was all, no, he's all, did you actually read the article? Because the article went on to completely contradict the title, and it was like, yeah, that's what we do. We read headlines, we don't read articles, or we read
Or
some,
books.
or
Or
listen,
books.
yes, or book titles of books, and we don't read the actual book. And the same, so for me, I would reading books. I fall to reading books, but I also like to associate with other people who are looking for the same answers and talking to those people. Like, what did you find out? Like, how do you feel about this? Like, I'm not looking for someone to tell me how I should feel about butter, but I'm looking for other people who are like, yeah, I was reading about this too, and I think real butter, grass-fed butter, and you know what grass-fed butter is? What is grass-fed butter? That's such a weird term. You know what I mean? It's like how would you? I mean, so you find out these things. Like you could look at thousands of books and never find these things out. But when you talk to other humans, it's like they'll give you little things that you go, oh, what? I wonder what that is. There's a thread. I'm going to go pull that.
Totally. And I think the kind of the basis for all of this is like what you said around that there's so much information out there. I mean, at any other point in history, we've never had this much access to information, and it's a double-edged sword. I mean, I remember learning, I don't know if it was in college or when I worked, I worked for IBM for 15 years. So, a lot of things come from that, right? But it's like there's so much information that it becomes overwhelming. And so in that, from that is how we learned, okay, how do we sift through this quickly? And so that's the trap we can fall in, is that, we're conditioned to want to sift through information quickly by looking at headlines, looking at bits and pieces. We want the soundbite. And as social media has crept up, then it's always changing, right? Like now, first it was, you write this short little Twitter post, and then it was a longer Facebook post, and then it became these videos, and then the videos were too long, and then now you can only do a 2-minute reel on Instagram and all these quick little stories, right? So you have to convey information in such small chunks, but people also have been conditioned to learn things in these small sound bites, and they're not really learning anything then, right? And so,
Yeah.
and everyone always says, I'm too busy, I don't have time, but really it's fatigue is what I've realized. It's like people just don't want to take in any more information. And they don't realize that the little pieces that come their way throughout the day really do get embedded into their brains and into their psyche, and you can't get it out. So like all the stuff being pushed at you is what you think is really going on right now from a political standpoint, but it's like not, right? There's like, it's only what you're being shown. You if you actually looked and kind of went under the covers and dug a little bit more, then you would find that a whole bunch of other things are actually going on right now, and that some things that are being reported on actually happened, a long time ago. So one example of that, just to take it back to politics here for a minute, away from, butter, because we can go on the butter example the whole time, right? Is around, our election systems, right? So a lot of people were talking about audit, right? But it's like, we kind of took it as, okay, well, we need to understand, our Texas state constitution, our laws, how we interact with the federal government, when we get money for things, how does that interplay happen? Who's responsible for what? And, actually going in and reading the manuals and the laws and the statutes in our Constitution has been super eye-opening, because if you're just reading a few sound bites in an article that says, believe, XYZ, this is what's happening, then you're going to miss so much. But it does take time, but it's like I've had so many people hurl, various insults at me, like, well, where are you getting your information? And it's like, at the source. Like, I don't did you read the law?
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
actually a law that you can read, and all of this information is on, is on here, right? Like this manual is here. You click on it, you read it, and you read it at this point in time, and then you see how they changed it and how they changed the law over time, and you can see how this happened. You can see how we got
Yeah.
into this mess, right? I mean, I don't know how else to say it. It's like you can follow along with how the laws have changed, and you hear stories when you go and show up at the Capitol about how, oh, I was there and I helped to author this bill, and then they changed it at the, when they put it into the statute, they changed something. They changed the word from, shall to might, maybe, right? And it changed the whole
Yeah.
law. So it's important to know these things, and to go to the source, because then the articles are pushing an agenda, are pushing a narrative, and people just eat it up.
Yes. I'd say, like, you might think that you can't, or if you read it you won't understand it or something, but you'd be surprised how easy it is to read it. And I'd say the first time you go into reading like the Habit Act, or the state constitution, or even the United States Constitution itself, the goal shouldn't be like you're going to have to give a 15-minute dissertation on the topic as soon as you're done reading it. Like, you're just trying to familiarize yourself with, these are the documents that govern everything around us, right? So how do these things work together? And it's a commitment to lifelong learning, really. Like, you're just trying to um, you're trying to establish a baseline of understanding of how things work that is from the source itself, and not how CNN thinks it works, or how Fox News thinks it works. Either way, right? Like, you want to know, this is really what the law says, and then then you can tell that these are opinions about what should be happening, but the actual law, you can discern the difference between what was written and what they're saying about what was written. And if you haven't actually read the source document, it'd be really difficult to know the difference. Um, and not to take it off politics, but I won't bring up butter. But one of the things that about the being able to manipulate information that was kind of like eye-opening for me is that if you have children, we do this with children all of the time. Like, you're trying to get your kid out of the house because you need to go somewhere, so you can tell them whatever you want, and then, if depending on what you tell them, will inspire motivation for them to move much quicker, right? Like, we might stop here, or we might do this. So if the powers that be want to motivate us to do a certain thing, they can share information in a certain direction, and we'll start moving in that direction. Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Look at
I
this.
thought maybe it would be good to just understand that word discernment, because sometimes these words get tossed about and we don't even know what they mean anymore. Um, so let's read the definition of discernment, and then we'll understand. I mean, I'm just reading it again for the first time in a while, but the quality of being able to grasp and comprehend what is obscure, which I find fascinating, right? I mean, how interesting is that? That it's about what's obscure, right? What's hidden from view. So if there's a narrative being pushed that we don't want people to eat butter for XYZ reason, whatever nefarious purpose or beneficial or whatever they thought, right? If there's some agenda that's it's like, we're just going to push this story, right? And then all of the other stuff gets obscured, right? You have to go down to maybe 100 layers of Google search results to find anything that's counter to butter being bad, right? And so it's obscure. So how do you use your discernment? I mean, it's not just about, oh, I'm going to climb into the depths of Google search rankings, but I think it's that listening to your gut and understanding that you are your best expert, right, to information that's coming at you, and you are the best person to understand, not anyone else, right? And there's no higher authority to you, because your higher authority is not some other person or whatever. It's you and your relationship with God or whatever, right? But it's like that discernment is finding what's hidden that might be relevant for you.
Yes. Yes. And I think one big thing about our movement in general is that we want everyone to find what they know to be true. You know, like we on this podcast or in the chat rooms or wherever, we might share opinions, but ultimately it's up to you to decide. Like I'm not trying to decide for somebody what they should believe or not believe. But if you read the state constitution or any of the EAC documentation or the manuals that you mentioned earlier, if you start to read those things, you understand how these systems were or why they were established, how they're maintained, how they could be certified for use. Like it can't just anybody just can't come in with a box and say this thing counts votes. We're gonna use it in Texas. You can't just walk in with anything you made in your garage. There is a process for that. Well, what is the process? Well, there's a whole manual that's like 400 pages long that outlines what that is. And then if you go through that, you don't need to understand every single verse in the entire document to understand the steps necessary to get something certified for use. And then if it's certified for use, is that at the federal level? Then what happens at the state level? How does it transfer from feds to state? Well, the state constitution talks about how that works, and you can go find those, and you don't have to read every law or every regulation or statute in the state of Texas to find that out. There's only like 10 or 15. And if you read through those, and they just changed them in 2001, right? So, but if you read through those, you can get a really good understanding of this is where they originate, this is how they get certified, or this is the steps necessary for a proper certification. And this is what the state does to certify for use in federal elections. And once, and if something was used before it was certified, then, I mean, I don't know, that's kind of weird. That's like driving before you have a license, or is that, I mean, I know there's an awful lot of contradictions, right? Once you start looking at how all of those things line up, you can see the gaps. You don't need Trump to give a speech about something being totally rigged. You don't need other people on social media influencers to tell you. Like you can read what they were supposed to do, and then you can read what they did, and you can see the inconsistencies. I mean, then you can make a decision for yourself about whether you think that was fine. Or not, right? And I think one of the biggest things that people fall into is that they are just trying to save time, and saving time. They're banking that you won't invest the time to really dig deep enough to find the real answer. And we don't have to. You could rip off really big topics like, did we land on the moon or not? Right? Like, I don't know. And then you could go, well, it's really, they have a lot of evidence to support that we did. Then you could dig deeper and find things that might give you questions about whether we did or we didn't. I don't know. I mean, but if it were to happen again in 2022, they would have to give you so much more information in order for you to believe that we did it or not. The level of information that you needed to accept in 1969 was so much different than what it is today. And it's that they're banking on, you are so overwhelmed with so much other stuff that when you see the word organic, you go, that's the healthy one, and you buy it. You know, even if they are Cheetos, like organic Cheetos are the healthy Cheetos, right? So, I mean, I had a friend that they're organic, and I'm like, they're Cheetos.
They're Cheetos. They're still Cheetos.
Yeah, they're Cheetos. I mean, it says organic on the bag, I'll give you that, but they're Cheetos.
Yes, that's exactly right. I mean, in the end, the only way to quote unquote save America is to become a part of the process, right? You have to understand what you are voting for, and you have to understand how how the legislature works. I mean, these are people who you are literally putting in a position to, run your life. Basically, yeah. I mean, you are handing over the keys to the castle to them, and you would be surprised the kinds of things that they do to take away your freedoms for that you traded that for convenience, and for the ability to just put your head in the sand and assume that they had your best interests at heart. And I think that has been the biggest lesson learned for me, is that just because I am not an evil person, I mean, I'm sure I have some evil in me. We all have, the little, both sides. We have that duality, right? But I'm saying, like, I can't envision evil to the degree that it would actually happen, right? That's something that I don't want to think about. I don't want to know. I don't want to envision those kinds of horrible things. But somebody is, right? And I think we've seen that over the past couple of years, is that evil does exist and they have plans, right? And so how do we thwart those plans? By being involved in the process and by reading the information that they're putting out there and showing up to working groups and committee meetings at your capital. They do a lot of it virtually now. You don't have to necessarily show up in person, although in person is way more impactful. But point is, you have to be involved. And I know people don't want to be involved, right? People, think, I don't have to be involved, right? But, I don't have to be involved. I'll just, but I think people are starting to see that, like, without their health, or, because our health has really been stolen from us the past, 50 years. And it's like, people just get tired. They don't want to take the time. But I have found more people want to take the time now than I've ever seen in my life.
And there's an assumption that participating is going to take up all of your time.
Mm-hmm.
So they've made it seem like, oh, well, I mean, you have to read so much and you'll have to do so much, and this will have to become your life. You'll have to quit your job and go in person to every government meeting ever. And that's not what we're saying. Like, you don't, to be an active participant, you do not need to quit everything and only eat, sleep, and drink local politics. Like, we're not suggesting that at all. It's really just like anything. It's like, just start participating. Like, that's it. Read a thing, go to a meeting. Maybe you'll find something you absolutely love and it will consume a little bit more time. Or you'll find a group that you enjoy being with and you'll start investing a little bit more time. But all it starts with is just being open to the idea and going to one meeting, or going to one group, or getting active online before you even get active offline. It's like, or reading one document. Just read the Constitution. Read the United States Constitution. Just read it. Read the amendments, which are really interesting. States' rights. Like, what's that all about? Like, what like, I remember from 8th grade learning about the politics, or about the Constitution, and I remember my 8th grade teacher, like, I wasn't paying attention very much, but I remember my teacher making a big deal about states' rights, and that was a problem, but they fixed it in the amendments. And I remember, like, after 40, I'm like reading it and I go, oh, like, I now I remember, like, I remember that was such a big deal in 8th grade, but I didn't really care because I was more interested in the girl who sat next to me. But now, like, I'm reading it, I'm like, oh, I see, like, there's some really significant powers that are outlined in the amendments that are very specific to what a state can do versus what the federal government can do. And a lot of us just believe that the federal government could just do whatever they want. And because they're in charge, like, we just go along with it. And that's absolutely not true. Like, there are very specific things the federal government can do, which are outlined in the Constitution, and everything else is left to the states. I mean, it's very clear. And, like, just reading that, you go, oh, like, wait a minute. So, like, the federal government thinks they can do all of this stuff, and we kind of just delegate that authority to them by omission, right? Like, we don't know what the process is. We don't know to get angry when they're stealing something. So they just continue to steal from us while we watch it happen. So just take, watching this podcast is helpful, right? I mean, but just being open to new sources of information, reading a thing, participating, asking questions, that starts to open your mind, and you'd be amazed at how far you go. A year from now, you'll be shocked at how many different things have been happening under your nose for years that you had no idea.
Yeah, and joining some of these groups. I mean, just the last minute here on discernment. There's a lot of supposed grassroots organizations out there right now, and I'm not saying ours is the best or whatever. This is not a competition. I'm just saying you've got to use your discernment with some of these groups too. We have been conditioned to look for fancy websites with lots of testimonials and things going on, and how many people they've helped, and all these metrics and statistics, to say, oh, well, that must be the best one because they've got all this stuff, right? They're following
Yeah.
the model of what I have learned is good marketing and good, they're perfect, right? I say, look for the people who aren't perfect, right? Look for the people who are slapping things together as fast as they can, who are doing things on, bootstrapping. They're not asking you for a ton of money. They're not giving you a title, like a board position or a tiara, right, to do it. You're just doing the work, right? You don't need money. You don't need tons of funding. You don't need all this stuff, right? Like even like the political campaign, it's like, why do we need all this money? Like literally, I have papers here. I'm helping someone campaign, that signature forms. Like I'm just walking around my neighborhood getting signatures. Like I don't need money to do that. I don't need a whole army of people. Like I'm calling different people to help, and I'm just, getting the data where I can get it, knocking on my neighbors' doors and talking to people. I mean, this is all we need to do. If more of us did that, then we wouldn't be in the position we're in. Just don't be distraught or turned off by, these big supposed organizations. It's really more of a front. I think a lot of them are just being funded by, corporate money, and it's just made to look flashy, but it doesn't need to be to get real work done, accomplished. You don't need all of that. I mean, we're not, fundraising for our group. We've not ever once said, oh, can you give me money for this, that, or the other? It's like, you couple $100 to file a lawsuit. We've done that. Somebody always does it, and then we're like, oh, can we pay you back? And they're like, no, it's fine. And then next time someone else does it, and it all just kind of works out. Same with this, like had to pay for Vimeo Pro or had to do this, right? We didn't have to fundraise, so don't be, caught up in the illusion that things require a lot of money or a lot of time. Any little contribution is helpful. Again, join our Telegram group. You can find that information on ttttexas.com or FocusedAction.io. Share those with people, and get involved, right? And hopefully the more you get involved, the more you'll understand what we're saying. But we really wanted to give this context as one of our very first episodes, so that it's helpful to know, go to the source. Don't just listen to us. Don't listen to this person or that news outlet. Actually go and read for yourself. If you don't believe the machines, weren't certified, go read the HAVA Act and all of that for yourself. Don't just believe some news article that says, hey, we read it and we said, this was not, true. When in fact, if you just read the documents, you'd see it's very much true. So any other final closing points, Bobby? I think we're at.
No, I mean, we talked about a bunch of things. So I'll put in the show notes, I'll put some links to like original sources for like Help America Vote Act, like we called it the HAVA Act, all throughout the whole show, but we know what it is and we've read it a bunch of times. But Help America Vote Act, which was passed in 2002, is very important. So we'll put a link to that, and I'll put a link to the manuals we mentioned earlier. I'll put some links to some things that'll get you started, but that's not by any means all of the things you should read, but it's just a couple of helpful suggestions of where we started. And I think that's it.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week on another episode of Focused Action. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.